Just left my house, going to Australia.
Welcome to Modern Grand Tour with me, Garland Lowe. Join the journey as we spend 3 months travelling to the other side of the world. Like the Grand Tours of old, we'll immerse ourselves in foreign cultures and feed our curiosity for the world with the diverse education that comes only with travel. We'll go on walking tours to understand the most popular and historic sites. We'll visit museums and pick out the most important objects and events. We'll talk to the locals and ask them what they think about their country. And there'll be some special moments off the beaten track. Travelling light with one small backpack, the itinerary for this trip begins with Belgium, followed by the Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Sweden, Finland, Russia, where we'll couch surf across the country via the Trans-Siberian Railway, then catch my first flights to South Korea and Japan before finally arriving in Australia, just in time for my best friend's wedding. In this 8th episode of the series, we'll visit an inhabited sea fortress, a church built into a rock, and learn about the strained relationship between Finland and Russia.
So we ended up losing 25,000 men, but the Russians ended up losing 125,000 men.
So let's explore Finland's capital city of Helsinki.
Okay. This is my first look of Helsinki. The first thing I noticed, it's windy. Second thing, it's cold. The third thing is the port is right by the city centre. You can actually see some of the attractions already.
Meeting at Helsinki's main square, I began my day with the usual walking tour, but not before a little exercise.
There's the Swedish period, the Russian period, and then the Finnish independent period. The Swedes conquered Finland basically in the 12th and 13th centuries, and so made Finland part of the Western European cultural sphere. That went on for about 600 years. 1809 is when the other great neighbor, Russia in the east, finally takes over. Finland became a part of the Russian Empire, but, very important, an autonomous Grand Duchy. That means we had autonomy, so we were very different from the rest of Russia. We could build our own national identity for the first time. We became kind of conscious of the fact that we are Finnish, we're distinct, we're not Swedish, we're not Russian, we're something different. And so we had our own laws and our own currency and our own different church and language from the rest of Russia and so on. So that's when the Finnish kind of national and independence movement begins to grow. And then finally, 1917, the communists take over in Russia and the Finns say, this is the moment to become independent. We're not going to go that way. We declare independence 1917 and the world recognizes it. And that means 100 years of Finnish independence. Yes. 19th century, when we were under Russia, as I mentioned before, there was this movement of national romanticism and national identity all over Europe, right? And so what was the idea of being Finnish? The kind of quote that is famous, Swedes we are no longer, Russians we do not wish to become, so let us be Finns. But now the question is, what is it to be Finnish? There's at least one thing that's purely Finnish. Finnish, the Finnish language. It's a non-Indo-European language. It wasn't Swedish, it wasn't Russian. It's a very unique thing. It's a part of the Finno-Ugric languages. It's a Finnic language. Estonian is also a Finnic language, and Hungarian is also included. And it means that it's not related to Swedish, so you don't get anything. If you look at the Finnish text, you're just at a loss.
Indeed, as this chart shows, Finnish words are far removed from the words of other European countries. And this linguistic difference has even resulted in there being many Finnish words that do not even have a direct English equivalent, such as hippitini tiritis, which means bouncy cushion satisfaction, as in, your dog looks well hippitini tiritis. Kalsarikannit, which means drinking at home in your underwear, as in, your dad loves the kalsarikannit. And lastly, pukikumatus, which means suit ghost, and refers to someone who is always immaculately dressed in formal clothes, yet doesn't appear to get any useful work done, as in, that TV politician, what a pukikumatus. Anyway, back to our tour guide.
So what we have here is the street signs you've maybe noticed in 2 languages. So the story behind that is first you have the Finnish and then you have the Swedish. And the story is that in the Swedish times, Swedish was the official language of administration and so on. But then when Finland became part of Russia, this guy and some others started a language struggle to get Finnish recognized as the official language, because it was absurd that in a country of Finns that everything official would be done in Swedish, where only the rich educated ones really had learned Swedish and the rest, the poor people, were speaking Finnish and didn't know Swedish. And it's still going on actually. Still we need to study Swedish in school obligatorily, so we're the only country outside Sweden where that is the case. Many Finns are complaining that why do we have to learn Swedish, because, you know, rather speak Spanish or some bigger, more useful language. But that's still the case because of the Swedish history. So the Swedes have a nice time coming here to their colony, you know, everything in Swedish, and everybody needs to provide the services in Swedish. And the Finns are a little bit, you know, not so happy, most of them, with it. But Swedish is still the official language of Finland, number 2, and Finnish is the number 1 official language, thanks to him and some others who made it official. He is the author of the lyrics of the national anthem of Finland. They are there written on the lower part of the statue. The lyrics are about basically our land, not about war victories or anything like that. So that was the second thing they discovered in the 19th century as a basis for Finnish identity. The first thing was the language, and the second thing that was Finnish was, well, our land, Finland, the land of the Finns. So what is our land like? 70% forest, 11% lakes. That's a typical Finnish landscape, very dear to the Finnish heart. This is the third hero of Finnish national identity. His name is Elias Lönnrot. He's up there. And Lönnrot is the author of the Finnish national epic poem called the Kalevala. So that is the most translated work of Finnish literature to over 60 languages. It's kind of like the Finnish Bible, includes all the mythology from the creation of the world, you know, the old Finnish beliefs, traditions and mythologies passed on from generation to generation, with a specific poetic meter that is as old as the Finnish language, they say. And it goes like this. Mieleni minun tekevi, aivoni ajattelevi. So you get the melody, oh thank you. So the melody is like that. Da, 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 da. It has inspired some great names in world literature. So for example, you know, J.R.R. Tolkien and the Lord of the Rings, right? Tolkien was so fascinated by the Kalevala that he actually learned Finnish in order to be able to read it in the original. And he was so influenced by it that he even created his own language in the Lord of the Rings called the Quenya language, the Elvish language, and it's based on Greek, Latin and Finnish. He discovered a Finnish grammar book, and he said it's like discovering a cellar full of a wine that you've never tasted before.
With Finnish national identity being gradually built by Snellman, Runeberg and Lönnrot in what is known as the Fennoman movement, Russia responded with Russification, enforcing their own laws, currency, church and language. However, this only created further Finnish resistance, leading to the assassination of the Russian Governor-General of Finland, and ultimately to Finland's declaration of independence in 1917. But 2 decades later, Russia would return.
1939, there was the Winter War, the beginning of the Second World War. The Russians, the Soviet Union, made all kinds of deals with many small nations in Eastern Europe. And they also asked territory from Finland to be able to defend St. Petersburg better. And what happened was, the Finns, as the only kind of crazy, stubborn nation, the Finns said no. And well, then what happened was that the Russians attacked a country of 171 million people against a country of 3.5 million people at the time. So it was this kind of a David versus Goliath battle that people thought that Finland would just be a nice little story in history after that very soon. Amazingly, what happened that all the Finnish men were called to the army to defend the country, including my grandfather. And amazingly, for months in this winter war, the Finnish defense line stood and held against the Russians. So we ended up losing 25,000 men, but the Russians ended up losing 125,000 men. And so what happened was then finally the Russians did break the defense line, and there were new negotiations, and there was a kind of a compromise. So we ended up losing about 10% of our land in the east, but on the other hand we kept our independence, which we still kind of see as almost like a miracle.
Having learnt about the key moments in Finnish history, we then explored Helsinki's more modern and quirky side.
The world's most beautiful Burger King. There is a beautiful big Finnish painting, classical Finnish painter Eero Järnefelt. There are many of these paintings in the art gallery that shows you the Finnish national landscape from this national park called Koli in the east, and that is the typical Finnish forest and lake view that I was talking to you about. Flying usually around the markets, the seagulls that sometimes attack the tourist food, so be careful. Angry birds.
Although the seagulls are angry, I'm sure, what he was actually leading to is the world's most popular mobile game series of all time, with over 3 billion downloads. Created in Finland, the success of Angry Birds reflects the country's renowned tech sector, with it being Finland's largest export industry, producing brands such as Linux and Nokia. The latter of which was incredibly founded in 1865 as a wood pulp mill, who years before making one of the most iconic phones of all time, actually made toilet paper.
So inside we have this kind of Finnish atmosphere of the forest, you know, Finnish spirituality of the forest, we can say. So lots of Finnish people feel the need to go back to the forest, even if most people now live in the cities. They have their summer cottages or they go for walks to feel close to the nature. So this is a little nice place for this kind of Finnish spirituality of the forest. So the Moomins are these hippo-looking trolls that have adventures in the forest.
So come with me, give me your hand. I'll take you up to Moomin land. You can fly just like a bird. You sing the best song ever heard there with the Moomins.
They live in this Moomin house, and this is really the point here, because the Moomin house basically comes from right here in the red building, the rear corner. So that is the perfect model for the Moomin house here, because that is what Tove Jansson saw from her childhood window on the right side on that street where she lived.
A pool thing they got in the middle of Helsinki here, where they call it the sea pool. So basically they've just built this wooden kind of frame around this water here, so you can swim in this water, and then afterwards you've got like another pool just next to it, but it's like a jacuzzi hot pool. Look, some people getting into it now. Amazing stuff. Sounds fun. Sounds fun, doesn't it? Well, the hot jacuzzi thing does. That doesn't. Swimming in that doesn't.
And that is the first side sauna in the world. And the sauna cabin costs 240 euros per hour, so good luck. So basically what we have here is 5 million people in Finland and about 3 million saunas. So that gives you an idea of how important and how everyday and how everywhere the sauna is. Actually, it's so Finnish that sauna is actually a Finnish word. Sauna is the Finnish pronunciation. It's basically in every language except Swedish, who have to have their own word for it. What we do is we stay in the sauna for some time because it's quite hot, about 80 degrees Celsius, and then you go out to cool off. If you have a summer cabin like most Finns do by a lake somewhere in the forest, you jump straight into the lake from the sauna, and if it's winter you just make a hole in the ice of the lake and still swim there, or you roll in the snow. So that's the Finnish experience. And then you go back to the warm sauna and it's good for your circulation, it's healthy. And then we beat ourselves with these kind of branches of a birch tree. Gives a nice aroma. Most Finns were actually born in the sauna in history. You're just living in the forest and you give birth to the children in the sauna. And as everybody's born naked, right, so we go to the sauna naked. It's all equal place of equality. Equality is very important for the Finns. We're the first country in Europe to give women the right to vote. And so in the sauna, you know, you're rich or poor, you're the same. And then you also start having this kind of deep conversations. Business can be done in the sauna, so in workplaces you have saunas. The political meetings have taken place in the sauna also. And it's possible to really talk about anything, because then in the sauna the bare truth comes out, you see. You're not hiding anything.
Indeed, sauna culture may be one of the reasons why Finland and its Scandinavian cousins have developed a culture of equality and truth, as measured in the Social Justice Index and the Corruption Perceptions Index. And not forgetting the sauna's primary function for health and well-being, Finland takes the top spot as the world's happiest country. With the excellent tour over, presenting me with a balance between past and present aspects of Finnish culture, I then explored the city alone, and witnessed the real-life impact by the things I'd just learned. First, the impact of historical politics on the cityscape.
Just looking at the architecture, it's interestingly quite Russian, I think. I mean, this is 1910-11. Has a much more kind of Eastern feel to it.
And then the impact of the Finnish language for tourists.
What's that? Hi, what is this?
Now, if Finnish were an Indo-European language like the rest of Europe, I might have been able to decipher that this word meant chip, and this word meant garlic, and this word could mean fiery, or red hot, or mortal. As it was a Finno-Ugric language, I was at a loss, and just assumed they were almond flakes and stuffed a bunch in my mouth.
Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. Ah. It's disgusting. What on earth was that? I thought they were like almond.
My last activity for the day was visiting the Rock Church, which despite its name isn't dedicated to Finland's famous love for heavy metal, which probably disappointed these two. First though, I thought I'd have a climb on the rock roof, which from above looks amazingly like a flying saucer has crashed into it.
Alright, so the church is in there. I wonder if you can actually see. No, you can't see anything. Actually, there's a church inside this rock formation. Obviously this is man-made, but somehow I think the church has been caved into a natural rock formation.
My next day began with a visit to Helsinki's rival to Brussels' Mannequin Piss. Although not quite as sophisticated and definitely not as subtle as its Belgian brother, I actually prefer the Finnish version, as there's something quite relatable to this bad boy.
I wonder if it's drinkable. I'm surprised there's nothing coming out of this side. Chocolate. Maybe chocolate could come out of this side. Let's go, that's enough.
Ice hockey is Finland's most popular sport, with the national team labelled as one of the Big Six, which even with its small population shouldn't be such a surprise considering its climate, which it shares with other members of the Big Six who are placed on the same latitude. Maybe what is more surprising is that Finland's second most popular sport is Formula 1, where they have produced 3 world champions, which is more per capita than anywhere else. And the reasons for Finland's F1 success are said to be because of the country's abundant roads, icy conditions, engineering expertise, go-karting popularity, and most interestingly, the uniquely Finnish concept of Sisu, which roughly translates as gutsy, yet also means determination, perseverance and acting rationally in the face of adversity, which is an attitude said to be ingrained in the national character, as demonstrated in the Winter War against the Soviet Union, and which is often attributed to producing the stubborn, ice-cool-headedness of Finland's world champions. For my last activity in Helsinki, I took a ferry to one of Finland's most popular tourist attractions. Suomenlinna, meaning Castle of Finland, is a sea fortress made up of 6 islands.
let's enter this fortress.
Constructed by the Swedes to keep out the Russians, it was taken over by the Russians who developed it to keep out the Swedes. After Finnish independence, it was again used to keep out the Russians until the 1970s, when Suomenlinna was transformed for civilian purposes. Today, 800 residents make this UNESCO World Heritage Site not just a living museum for tourists, but an actual and quite special island community.
It's like a proper town. Who I found? Sitting on a sofa in the middle of a fortress island. Could do with hot chocolate. That'd be nice. Just watch the world go by. Reminds me of Dawson's Creek. Like, this is the kind of thing Dawson would do. Dawson and Joey would sit down on a sofa that they've just dragged from a skip onto a deserted island and get up to stuff. Would they do that? I don't know if they did that. I think I invented that episode in my head. I don't wanna wait.
So open up your morning light and say a little prayer for I. You know that if we are to stay alive and see the peace in every eye.
Ready to depart Helsinki and heading to the bus station inside this mall, I quickly popped into a gift shop to see how Finland sees itself. And the theme that jumped out was the nature of Finland. From these statues of bears and moose to these hunting knives and reindeer hides. Indeed, Lapland is the northern region of Finland where you can see the northern lights 200 nights of the year, experience no sunlight in the winter and 24-hour sunlight in the summer, and actually visit Santa Claus in his office every day of the year, including Christmas Day, for free at this address. But what most people don't know is that Lapland is also home to the only recognised indigenous people of Europe, the Sami. Currently living in northern Norway, Sweden, Finland and northwest Russia, with a population of around 100,000, the Sami established themselves on these lands over 2,000 years ago as semi-nomadic people who had their own shamanistic pagan beliefs and a lifestyle based on hunting, fishing, farming and most famously, reindeer herding. But from the 1600s, as the state rulers sought colonial expansion, the Sami were forced to move further and further north, until finally assimilation laws were introduced that forced Sami children into boarding schools, where on return to the Sami community as teenagers, they would no longer be familiar with Sami language or culture. Other eradication tactics by the state included the sterilisation of Sami women, digging up sacred Sami graves for biased genetic research, and offering financial incentives for settlers to move to the north. Today, although the states have apologised for their historical treatment of the Sami, there are still concerns regarding their land, as new forms of colonialisation take place, such as mining, logging and oil and gas exploration, all of which has led to a cultural decline, where only 10% of Sami people continue to lead a traditional way of life, as the majority live and work in the cities.
So yeah, 2 days in Helsinki. Good fun again.
And as I waited for my bus, knackered as you can tell from walking around Dawson's Creek Island, I could reflect on my time in Finland, where what stood out most were these postcards. Or rather, what they represented.
Swedes we are no longer. Russians we do not wish to become. So let us be Finns.
It is the story of Finland's national identity. Geographically sandwiched between two Baltic giants, Finland's 600 years of Swedish rule, followed by 100 years of Russian rule, seemingly suffocated Finnish culture. But within this time, two very Finnish things survived. Language?
A non-Indo-European language. It wasn't Swedish, it wasn't Russian, it's a very unique thing.
And in particular, nature.
70% forest, 11% lakes. That's a typical Finnish landscape, very dear to the Finnish heart.
So dear to the heart that nature seemed to manifest itself everywhere in Helsinki.
The world's most beautiful Burger King. So inside we have this kind of atmosphere of a Finnish spirituality of the forest. The Moomins are these hippo-looking trolls that have adventures in the forest.
A pool thing they got in the middle of Helsinki here, they call it the sea pool.
You're just living in the forest and you give birth to the children in the sauna.
The church has been caved into a natural rock formation. Sitting on a sofa in the middle of a fortress island.
And it would be these two powerful symbols of language and nature that would drive the independence movement, giving birth to a nation which, despite its young age and subjugated history, has incredibly gone on to be one of the most fair, honest and happiest countries in the world. And as I leave Finland and Northern Europe for the east of Russia, I look back at the countries of the first leg of my journey.
Just left my house, going to Australia.
And the shared cultural traits that I take for granted, such as a mild climate, the Latin script alphabet, liberal democracy, Protestant values, and of course, the European Union.
The visa, even for the visa? The front.
But now I was stepping into the unknown. Join me for the Russian leg of this modern Grand Tour, where we'll start in St. Petersburg and where we'll see the world's most expensive eggs, go urban exploring in an abandoned factory, and couch surf with a couple of locals.
We've been on the moon.
Phil, yeah. Oh my god, don't do that.
So until next time, Godspeed.
Sometimes it's just easier to take what you've been given, put your faith in high spirits, hope things turn out for the best. We're too old to be fighting and we're too young to be dying.